Okay, let's unpack this. No Country for Old Men. It's
Yeah.
one of those films that really stays with you, right?
Oh, definitely.
You watch it, you see this, like, tense crime story playing out across West Texas.
Yeah, the landscapes are amazing.
But there's always this undercurrent, this feeling that something, well, much bigger is going on.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, the Coen brothers, adapting Cormac McCarthy's novel, they really crafted something brimming with psychological depth.
Right, and symbolism.
Potent symbolism, yeah, and a real allegorical feel to it. The impact just goes way beyond the surface plot.
Exactly. And that's really what we want to get into today. We've gathered some really fascinating insights that dig into the film's layers.
The complexity.
Yeah, the complexities, why it's more than just, a great thriller. Think of this as your shortcut to really grasping those hidden levels in No Country for Old Men. So our goal, our mission here, is to pull out the most significant insights, themes, characters, those deeper meanings you might miss first time around.
And I think it's also key to understand why it keeps resonating, why it feels so unsettling, even now.
Good point. It's not just the story itself.
No, it's about the kind of uncomfortable truths it holds up about, well, the world.
Okay, so let's dive in. One of the big ideas right off the bat is the sense that the characters, they try, but ultimately they're just swept up by forces they can't control. Chaos, maybe?
Well, what's fascinating is how the film really confronts this, what you might call the illusion of control.
Right.
The characters plan meticulously. They try to outsmart each other.
Like Moss, thinking he's got it figured out.
Exactly. But there's this constant sense that their fates aren't really in their own hands. The insight, I think, is that our best plans often just don't matter against, randomness.
And Anton Chigurh, he's sort of the center of that feeling, isn't he? He's not just a bad guy. He feels like something else.
Precisely. Chigurh acts almost like an embodiment of fate, or maybe chaos itself. His actions seem so arbitrary sometimes.
Yeah, arbitrary is the word.
Dictated by this really personal, almost incomprehensible code. That coin toss is the perfect example, right?
Oh, yeah, life or death on a flip.
It just strips away any sense of understandable morality.
Yeah.
No rhyme or reason you can appeal to.
It really makes you think about those moments where you just feel powerless against stuff happening.
And does the film offer any comfort there? That's the question. What's significant, I think, is that it doesn't give easy answers. This chaotic force Chigurh represents. It just seems to be part of the firm's reality.
Okay, another really powerful theme running through it is this idea of moral decline. You feel it strongly with Sheriff Bell.
Tommy Lee Jones, yeah. Fantastic performance.
He seems to stand for a past era, like a time when right and wrong felt clearer, maybe.
That's absolutely crucial. Bell embodies this fading world of, law and ethics. He's just increasingly baffled by what he sees as society's moral decay.
Right.
The film draws a pretty clear line between his world and this new world, one with way more violence, more ambiguity, things Bell just can't get his head around.
It's almost like the film is saying the old rule book doesn't apply anymore. There's this real sense of generational despair in Bell.
Yeah, despair is a good word for it. This feeling that traditional values are just gone, collapsed.
And that connects to, that wider anxiety people sometimes feel about change, about things falling apart.
Definitely. It taps into that feeling that the world is losing its moral compass somehow.
And then there's the violence itself. It's so stark, so brutal.
Unflinching.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel sensationalized like in a lot of movies. It's almost just there, like the landscape.
That's interesting. The film treats violence in this remarkably amoral way. It's not necessarily evil, just a force.
Like a natural force.
Almost, yeah, like the desert itself. Unforgiving. The film just observes it, presents the consequences, but doesn't really preach about it.
And that neutrality is what makes it so unsettling, I think. It forces you to look at it raw without the usual good versus evil safety net.
Exactly. It strips away those familiar ways of making sense of it and just leaves you with the impact.
Yeah. Okay, let's shift focus a bit to the characters. Anton Chigurh. He's unforgettable. What's going on inside his head? What's the psychology?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? He really embodies this kind of existential fatalism.
Fatalism.
The belief that events are predetermined, basically, that we don't have much control. And he couples that with this chillingly consistent psychopathy.
Consistent, yeah. He follows his own rules.
He operates by a personal code, But like we said, it's a code nobody else can understand. There's just this complete lack of emotion, no empathy at all.
And the coin toss really drives that home. It's like he's removing himself from the decision.
What are some ways people interpret that coin toss, you think?
Well, maybe it's him ducking responsibility.
Yeah, it can be seen that way. A mechanism to remove human choice, moral agency. It just reinforces his whole belief in predetermined outcomes. It's terrifying fatalism, really.
And then there's Llewellyn Moss, the guy who finds the money. He thinks he's being smart, playing the angles.
But it all comes crashing down.
So
Moss is a really interesting study. He's presented as this, working class guy, Vietnam vet, capable.
it's a calculated choice. A bad one, but calculated.
The profoundly misguided one, yeah. He takes the money, he's resourceful, he's pragmatic in his own way.
But he just wasn't ready.
Exactly. The film suggests he's just morally unprepared for the kind of force he unleashes by taking that case.
He's trying to play a game, but he doesn't know the rules or maybe the stakes. He's like that modern person who thinks, I can handle this with just logic.
Right. And in that sense, he becomes this tragic figure, maybe a stand-in for the contemporary individual who just gets overwhelmed by forces they didn't see coming and can't control.
And Sheriff Bell, on the other side, just seems crushed by it all, by the changing world.
Absolutely. He's deeply melancholic. You could call it existential burnout, maybe.
Burnout, yeah.
His defeat isn't just about failing to catch Chigger. It's deeper. It's realizing the world he understood, where being sheriff meant something specific. It's just vanishing.
That final dream he talks about, it's so powerful. Feels like the heart of his sadness.
It really does. It puts him in this psychic space of mourning, as one analysis put it, grieving not just for the dead, but for that lost sense of order, of purpose.
And his father riding ahead with the lantern?
Just out of reach. Yeah, it speaks volumes about feeling like guidance is lost, like hope is just gone.
The film also uses these really strong archetypes, doesn't it? Chigger as the Grim Reaper. Hard to argue with that one.
That's a key way to see him, for sure. A potent symbol of inescapable death, of fate, relentless, inevitable. It taps into that universal fear.
Right, these figures that represent big human ideas.
Exactly. Archetypal storytelling.
And Moss, the guy who thinks he can beat the odds but is basically doomed from the start.
He fits that doomed hero archetype perfectly, I think. Tries to navigate this dangerous world with maybe outdated skills or just relying on grit and smarts that aren't enough against Chigger.
Against fate, maybe.
Perhaps.
And Bell, the sheriff. He's the disillusioned watchman, the guy on the wall who sees the darkness coming but can't stop it anymore.
Precisely. The aging guardian who realizes the monsters have gotten too big, too strange for him to handle.
Even Carla Jean, Moss's wife, she has this kind of archetypal feel too, surprisingly.
Yeah, interesting point. She embodies maybe the oracle or just basic human decency.
How so?
Her refusal to play Chigger's coin toss game,
Yeah.
even facing death. It shows this quiet, profound moral strength.
It doesn't save her, though?
No, doesn't change the outcome. But it affirms something human, some dignity, even when facing the inevitable.
Wow. Okay, symbolism. The film is just packed with it. That coin toss is obviously huge, but there's so much more.
Oh, yeah. What's really striking is how consistently they use visual motifs, symbolic objects, to just hammer home those themes.
Like the desert. It's not just scenery.
Not at all. It really represents this moral emptiness, doesn't it? A desolate place where the usual rules, law, order, you just don't seem to reach. Lawlessness.
Yeah.
Isolation.
And I always notice the open doors and windows. They feel significant somehow.
They definitely do. They symbolize vulnerability, I think. Exposure to fate, to the unpredictable. They mark those moments where characters cross a line from safety to danger.
Like entering a motel room where something bad happens.
Exactly. A transition point.
Even Chigurh's boots, the focus on his footprints. Yeah. It feels creepy.
Yeah, it represents his relentless, silent presence. He's always coming, even when you don't see him.
Yeah.
Like a ghost leaving tracks, a constant reminder of the threat.
And the lack of music, we mentioned it briefly, but it's so critical to the mood.
The lack of a traditional score, yeah. Non-diegetic music. It ramps up the realism.
Yeah.
It contributes hugely to that feeling of existential dread.
Right, you're not told how to feel by the music.
Exactly. You just have to confront what's happening on screen unvarnished.
Even the animals, like those dogs early on, they feel ominous.
Like predators. Yeah, the presence of dogs, other predators. It often seems to foreshadow violence, underscores the sort of primal nature of the hunt.
Let's talk color for a sec. It's not flashy, but it feels intentional.
Very intentional, I think. The palette is really significant. Lots of earth tones, browns, tans.
Yeah, very dusty.
It grounds it, makes it feel raw, almost timeless. Suggests these struggles are ancient, you know.
And Chigurh's clothes, so stark.
That steel gray, the black.
Yeah.
It just reinforces him as death, doesn't it? Cold, clinical, impervious. No warmth there.
Then you get these pops of white sometimes. Lights, interiors, Belle's face even.
Mm-hmm. The white can evoke clarity, maybe wisdom, but also something lifeless. Resignation, perhaps, accepting the inevitable.
The whole visual style is striking, too. All those empty spaces in the shots.
Yeah, Roger Deakins' cinematography is incredible. Those compositions deliberately emphasize how small the characters are against the huge landscape.
Underscores their powerlessness.
Exactly. Powerless against these bigger forces.
And the stillness sometimes. Those long takes where nothing seems to happen, but the tension just builds and builds.
Yes. Those static frames, the long takes, they create this palpable sense of inevitability, like things are just unfolding and you can't stop them.
I also notice sometimes how Belle and Chigurh are framed similarly, like mirror images almost.
Oh, that's a great catch. Those visual parallels really highlight their philosophical opposition, right? The contrast between Belle's sort of weary decency and Chigurh's cosmic indifference.
Even everyday objects feel loaded. That briefcase full of money. It's more than just cash.
Absolutely. It's temptation, isn't it? The lure of easy wealth, but it's totally a poisoned fruit, leads straight to death and chaos. A modern Pandora's box, basically.
It unleashes hell.
Pretty much.
And Chigurh's weapon, that captive bolt pistol, it's so weird.
It's deeply unsettling. Its surreal nature is for cattle, right? So efficient, but totally disconnected from normal crime. It symbolizes that efficiency without emotion, execution without judgment.
Yeah, it makes the violence feel even colder. So the film often feels less like a straight crime movie and more like a dark fable, an allegory.
It definitely leans heavily into philosophical allegory. Chigurh, as we've been saying, he functions almost as an allegorical figure of death or fate.
His logic isn't human logic.
Not at all. It's the cold, unstoppable logic of mortality itself.
And Sheriff Belle's final dream. You mentioned that's allegorical too.
Yeah, I think so. An allegory of lost guidance. His father with the lantern riding ahead into the dark, always out of reach. It's this surreal image of yearning for a simpler time, for clarity, for hope, but a hope that feels unattainable now.
So even though it feels so real, so grounded, there's this surreal quality underneath it all.
Exactly. It's not overtly surreal with weird visuals, but it feels surreal because of the themes, the archetypes, the whole unsettling tone. It goes beyond just realism.
What about social commentary? Is the film saying anything broader about society?
Oh, I think definitely.
Yeah.
One key thing is maybe how modern evil can seem incomprehensible. Society struggles to grasp or contain violence that doesn't follow old patterns, old motives.
Right. Chigurh doesn't want the money in the same way others do. His motives are elsewhere.
Exactly. And traditional law enforcement, like Belle represents, seems almost obsolete against that.
Yeah, Belle's struggle really highlights that. The idea that the old ways, the old structures of law and order just aren't enough anymore. The law feels like a nice idea that doesn't work.
It feels like a fading ideal, yeah, rather than a real shield against chaos.
And Moss, his whole pursuit of the money ending so badly. Is that maybe a comment on the American dream?
It can certainly be read that way. A critique, perhaps, suggesting that chasing prosperity at all costs can be a dangerous illusion.
Especially for someone like him.
Yeah, carrying unforeseen, devastating costs, particularly for those who are already kind of vulnerable.
Man, this really adds so many layers. For people listening who want to explore similar kinds of films, themes, any recommendations?
Yeah, there are some great companion pieces. The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford has that similar slow burn Western vibe, dealing with myth, disillusionment. Paul Thomas Anderson's There Will Be Blood, another huge American epic about ambition, greed, moral decay.
Right, I see the connection.
Obviously the adaptation of McCarthy's The Road.
Right.
Super bleak, but powerful existential despair.
Definitely bleak.
For more contemporary stuff grappling with violence and maybe futility, Jeremy Saulnier's Blue Ruin is fantastic.
I haven't seen that one.
Worth checking out. Also, Hell or High Water. Similar themes of crime, economic desperation in Texas, complex morality.
Oh, yeah, good one.
And finally, another McCarthy screenplay, directed by Ridley Scott, the counselor. It's incredibly nihilistic, about greed and just merciless consequences.
Wow, okay. That's a great list to dive into next. So, just to sort of wrap up our deep dive on No Country for Old Men, we've really explored how it digs into fate versus choice, that shifting moral landscape.
And violence as this inexplicable, chillingly matter-of-fact force.
Yeah. And hopefully by getting into these deeper layers, the symbolism, the archetypes, the allegory, you can appreciate the film even more.
Absolutely. And maybe even, gain some fresh perspectives on the complexities of the world around us. Makes you think.
Definitely makes you think. So here's a final thought maybe for you, the listener, to mull over. Which specific part of the film's symbolism or allegory really hit home for you?
Good question.
Or maybe, what do you think were those unspoken new rules of the world that the film presents so unsettlingly?
That's a great thing to ponder. Because really, this deep dive, we've just scratched the surface. So we definitely encourage you, go back, watch No Country for Old Men again with some of this in mind. Or check out some of those other films we mentioned. Keep exploring these big, thought-provoking themes.